Let me tell you something, folks, and I'm saying this because the American people deserve the truth. Our economy right now is in very, very serious trouble. People feel it. You feel it every time you go to the grocery store, every time you look at your bills, every time you check your bank account. And it didn't just happen by accident. It didn't fall from the sky. It happened because the people in charge, the people who are supposed to protect our financial system, have absolutely no idea what they're doing. I'm talking about the Federal Reserve, the Fed. The group with the fancy titles, the PhDs, the economists who think they're the smartest people in the room. They sit in big offices, they give big speeches, but you know what? They've wrecked the American economy with some of the worst decisions we've ever seen. Now, I've been warning about this for a long time. Long before the media wanted to talk about it, long before the so-called experts admitted it, long before anyone else had the courage to say it, I said the Fed was making dangerous moves, too much printing, too much spending, too much manipulation. And guess what? I was right. And I'll tell you exactly what they did wrong. They printed trillions of dollars, trillions, folks, out of thin air. They flooded the system with money like we've never seen before, and then they acted shocked when inflation exploded. It's like they set the house on fire and then pretended to be surprised when the smoke alarms went off. They created this mess, and now the American people are the ones paying the price. Look around you, prices out of control, wages not keeping up, rent skyrocketing, interest rates through the roof. People can't buy homes, young families are struggling, retirees are terrified their savings won't last. And the Fed, they're sitting there saying, oh, this is unexpected. Unexpected? Give me a break. They cut rates to zero, then raised them at the fastest pace in modern history. Up, down, up, down. They don't know what they're doing. It's like watching somebody drive a car while blindfolded, hitting the gas and the brakes at the same time. And guess what? We're the passengers. Now, I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm honest. And the truth is, if the Federal Reserve keeps doing what it's doing, we're heading toward a very, very bad economic situation, something we haven't seen in decades, something nobody wants. But here's the important part. This was preventable. It didn't have to happen. We didn't need to be in this position. When I was president, America had the strongest economy in the world, the best economy in history. Low inflation, rising wages, booming manufacturing, energy independence. Everybody was winning. Everybody. Then these people walked in and blew it all up. So in this video, I'm going to tell you the truth, not the fake news version, not the Fed's excuses, not the political spin. You're going to hear exactly how the Federal Reserve created this disaster, why inflation exploded out of control, what they're hiding from the public, and what could happen next if they don't fix it fast, because the American people deserve to know what's coming. And believe me, after everything I've seen, everything I've heard, and everything the Fed is doing right now, what's coming is not good unless somebody fixes this mess. So let's get started, folks, because once you understand what the Fed really did, you'll understand why the economy feels the way it does and why things are about to get very, very interesting. All right, folks, now let's get into the real story, the part the Federal Reserve doesn't want you to hear, the part the fake news media will never cover, because it exposes exactly how incompetent these people truly are. And believe me, when you hear this, you're going to understand why the economy feels like it's collapsing right underneath your feet. Let's start with the biggest mistake, and this one was a huge one. The Fed printed more money than ever before in American history. Now, when you print a little money, when you do a little stimulus during tough times, okay, that's one thing. But what the Federal Reserve did was absolutely insane. They printed trillions and trillions of dollars like it was monopoly money. They pumped it into the system so fast they couldn't even count it. And what happens when you flood the economy with free money? Prices explode, assets inflate, the dollar collapses. Everybody knows this. A kid in middle school could tell you this. But the Fed These experts, they acted shocked, absolutely shocked, that printing trillions caused inflation. Folks, this is basic economics. This is day one stuff. It's not complicated. But somehow, the people in charge of our entire financial system didn't understand it, or they pretended they didn't. Honestly, I don't know which one is worse. Two, they dropped interest rates to zero and kept them there too long. This was another disaster. When money is basically free, which is what zero interest rates means, people borrow like crazy. Companies borrow, banks borrow, investors borrow. They take huge risks because the Fed basically says, hey, don't worry, free money forever. But guess what? Free money always ends badly. We saw massive bubbles forming everywhere: housing, stocks, crypto, everything. People were buying homes they couldn't afford. Companies were spending money they didn't have. And investors were making insane decisions. Why? Because the Federal Reserve told them, don't worry, the party will never end. But here's the truth. The party always ends, and this one ended very, very badly. 3. Then they panicked and raised rates faster than ever before. This is where it gets even worse. After telling everybody that inflation was temporary, I remember that word, temporary. They said it over and over again. Like a broken record, the Fed suddenly realized they were totally wrong. Inflation wasn't temporary. It was out of control. And what did they do? They slammed on the brakes. Not gently, not carefully. They went from zero to the highest rates in modern history almost overnight. This is what we call whiplash economics. First, they blow up the economy with easy money. Then they destroy it again with tight money. It's unbelievable. People couldn't buy homes anymore. Businesses couldn't borrow. Banks started trembling. The stock market went crazy, and ordinary Americans got crushed. They created a disaster, then created another disaster trying to fix the first one. Only the Federal Reserve could do something this ridiculous. 4, they pretended everything was fine while the economy burned. You know what really bothers me? They sat there in front of cameras, smiling, telling everyone not to worry. They said inflation was under control. They said the banks were safe. They said everything was strong. Meanwhile, savings were evaporating. Grocery prices were skyrocketing. Mortgages doubled. Credit card debt hit record highs. The middle class was drowning, and the Fed just kept saying, we have this under control. No, they didn't. They lost control. They lost it long before they admitted it. 5, they never take responsibility. They blame everything but themselves. This is classic. Whenever something goes wrong, the Federal Reserve always finds a scapegoat. Oh, it's supply chains. Oh, it's global events. Oh, it's unexpected market conditions. Anything except the truth, which is this. The Federal Reserve caused the inflation. The Federal Reserve caused the instability. The Federal Reserve caused the pain. And you know it. I know it. We all know it. They created a bubble. They popped the bubble. And now they're pretending none of this was their fault. In any real job, if you made mistakes this enormous, you would be fired immediately. But in Washington, if you fail, they give you a raise, a promotion, a book deal. That's how broken it all is. 6, the American people are paying the price for the Fed's failure. Let's talk about the people who suffer the most. You work hard, you pay taxes, you try to save, you try to take care of your family, but inflation is killing you. You go to the store, things cost twice as much as they used to. You try to buy a home, interest rates are sky high. You try to save money, inflation steals it from you. Meanwhile, the architects of this disaster sit comfortably in Washington, totally protected from the consequences. They've forgotten who they work for. They've forgotten the American people. They've forgotten the basic duty of leadership. And that, folks, is how we ended up in this mess, all right? Folks, now we're getting into the part nobody else will talk about. Not the fake news, not the economists, not the think tanks, none of them. Because the truth is very simple. The Federal Reserve is hiding things from the American people. And if you knew the full picture, if you saw what I've seen, you'd understand exactly why the economy feels so unstable right now. They want you to believe they have everything under control. They want you to believe inflation is temporary. They want you to believe their policies are brilliant. But it's all nonsense, total nonsense. So in this section, I'm going to tell you the things the Fed doesn't want you to hear, the real story behind the curtain. One, the Fed knows inflation is much worse than they're admitting. Let's start with a big one. The inflation numbers they give you, the official reports, the carefully calculated percentages, they're not telling the truth. And I'll tell you exactly how it works. They measure inflation using a formula that they've adjusted, changed, rewritten, watered down, and manipulated so many times over the years that the numbers don't reflect reality anymore. They don't include housing the way they used to. They don't include food the way they used to. They don't include energy the way they used to. They remove all the things people actually spend money on. So when the American people say, my grocery bill doubled, the Fed says, no, inflation is only 3%. What a joke. The American people aren't stupid. You feel real inflation every single day. And the Fed knows the real number is much higher, but they can't admit it, because if they did, it would expose how badly they messed up too. The Fed is terrified of a banking crisis. This is the part the media will never touch because they don't want people to panic. But I'm going to tell you the truth. Several major banks in this country are much weaker than the Fed wants you to believe. Why? Because the moment the Fed raised interest rates so fast, the value of long-term bonds, which banks hold in enormous amounts, collapsed. Huge losses, massive holes in balance sheets, billions gone. That's why you saw big banks collapse recently, out of nowhere. Remember that? One fell, then another, then another. The Fed rushed in, bailed them out, protected depositors because they knew if one more domino fell, the whole system could have shaken. They didn't solve the problem, they covered up the problem. And there's a big difference. Right now, there are banks quietly sitting on losses they don't want to show, and the Fed is praying nobody notices. 3, the Fed has no good options left, only bad and worse. This is the scary part. The Federal Reserve is boxed in, completely trapped. If they raise interest rates, the economy slows, banks weaken, stocks fall, housing collapses. The government pays more to service its debt if they cut interest rates. Inflation explodes even higher, the dollar weakens, savings get crushed, prices spiral out of control. No matter what they do, somebody gets hurt, and they did this to themselves. They spent years pretending the economy could run on free money forever. Well, guess what? When you live in fantasy land long enough, eventually reality comes knocking, and it's not friendly. The Fed is now trying to choose between two terrible outcomes, a recession or more inflation, and they're terrified of both. 4, the Fed is afraid of losing global control. This is the part almost nobody understands, but I do, because I've dealt with world leaders, central banks, financial institutions. I know how these people think. The Federal Reserve's power comes from one thing, the US dollar being the world's reserve currency. Everything, trade, oil, international payments, runs through the dollar. That gives the United States incredible power. But the Fed's reckless behavior is threatening that power. Countries around the world are saying, we don't trust the dollar like we used to. We want to trade in our own currencies. We want alternatives. You've never heard that before, folks. This is new and dangerous. And the Fed won't tell the American people this, but the truth is clear. The more inflation we have, the more debt we print. The more unstable our economy becomes, the weaker the dollar gets on the world stage. That's why China, Russia, Middle Eastern nations are all making moves. They see weakness, and weakness is dangerous. 5, the Fed is afraid of admitting they were wrong, and let me tell you something, the Fed will never, ever admit they made a mistake. Even though they made the biggest mistakes of our lifetime, They said inflation was transitory. Wrong. They said interest rates could stay low forever. Wrong. They said massive money printing wouldn't hurt the economy. Wrong. They said the banking system was strong. Very wrong. And now they're trying to rewrite the story, pretend they saw it coming, pretend they planned everything, pretend everything is under control. It's all nonsense. The truth is they didn't see anything coming. They were asleep at the wheel while the American economy was headed off a cliff. And now they're trying to hide the smoke, hide the fire, hide the damage. 6, the only thing they're protecting is themselves, not you. Let me ask you something. Did the Federal Reserve warn you before inflation exploded? No. Did the Fed warn you before mortgages doubled? No. Did they tell you banks were collapsing? No. Did they protect your savings from losing value? Absolutely not. They protected Wall Street. They protected politicians. They protected their own reputations. The American people, they were left behind, ignored, forgotten. And that, folks, is the truth they don't want you to hear. All right, folks, now we're getting into the part that really matters, what's coming next. Because let me tell you, when you understand what the Federal Reserve did, when you understand how badly they messed up, you start to see the future very clearly. And it's not pretty unless we change course fast. The American people deserve the truth, not sugar-coated, not watered down, not politically correct, the truth. So I'm going to tell you exactly what the Fed has set into motion, what we're heading toward, and what every hard-working American needs to be ready for. 1, a major economic slowdown, far worse than they're admitting. The Fed is trying to play tough right now. They're pretending everything is strong. They're pretending the job market is booming. They're pretending the economy is resilient. But let me tell you what's really happening. Companies are laying people off quietly. Job openings are disappearing. Hours are being cut. Families are living paycheck to paycheck. Small businesses are getting crushed by high borrowing costs. The Fed raised interest rates faster than any time in modern history, and you don't do that without serious consequences. We're heading into what you could call an economic cold front. Not a breeze, not a drizzle, a cold front. You'll feel it in hiring, in wages, in business growth, in spending all slowing down. And the Fed, they see it coming. They just won't admit it yet. 2, housing is about to hit a wall, a big one. Let me tell you something. The housing market right now is a ticking time bomb. Mortgage rates are sky high. People can't buy. People can't sell. People are stuck. And this is exactly what happens when the Federal Reserve plays games with interest rates. They took housing, which was already inflated from all their free money nonsense, and then they slammed it with the highest mortgage rates in decades. You know what that does? It freezes the market completely. Millions of Americans are locked out of home ownership, and millions more are trapped in homes they can't afford to leave. If rates stay high, housing prices will eventually drop hard. If rates fall suddenly, inflation comes roaring back. Either way, instability is coming. The Fed caused this, not the market, not homeowners, not businesses, the Fed. 3, a wave of bank problems nobody wants to talk about. Remember earlier when I mentioned banks holding massive losses on long-term bonds? Let me expand on that because this is important. When rates shoot up, the value of old low-rate bonds goes down. Huge losses, billions and billions in losses. Some banks already collapsed. You saw it with your own eyes. But here's the scary part. There are more banks out there with similar problems. The Fed is desperately trying to hide this. They're terrified of panic, terrified of bank runs, terrified of another domino falling. They can't say it publicly, but behind closed doors, they know the banking system is fragile right now. One wrong move, one shock to the system, and you could see another wave of failures. And guess who gets hurt? Not the bankers, not the politicians, not the insiders, you, the American people. 4, inflation isn't finished, not even close. The Fed wants you to believe they've defeated inflation. They keep saying it. They say it every month, every press conference, every speech, but inflation isn't gone. It's hiding, waiting, ready to come roaring back the moment rates come down or spending ramps up. Because, folks, let's be honest, prices haven't gone down, groceries haven't gone down, rent hasn't gone down, energy hasn't gone down, everything is still expensive. Inflation doesn't disappear because the Fed says so. Inflation disappears when the underlying problems are fixed, and none of them are fixed. If anything, the pressure is building. And when the Fed eventually panics, when they cut rates because the economy weakens, inflation is going to spike again. People don't want to hear it. The media won't say it, but it's true. 5, America's debt crisis is getting too big to ignore. This one is huge, and the Fed knows it. The U.S. government is now spending more on interest payments than ever before. Why? Because interest rates exploded, debt exploded, everything exploded. We're paying trillions just to cover interest, not the principal, not improvements, not investments, just interest. This is what happens when the Federal Reserve plays with fire. They made borrowing cheap for years, encouraged massive debt growth, then suddenly made borrowing expensive. It's like they pushed the accelerator to the floor, then slammed the brakes, and now the whole country has whiplash. If the debt keeps growing, and it will, something will break. The Fed doesn't want to talk about it. Politicians don't want to talk about it. But it's a massive storm cloud hanging over the country. 6, the dollar is facing global pressure like never before. I've dealt with world leaders. I've seen how they think. And right now, many countries are looking at America and saying, you're drowning in debt, you're printing too much, you're unstable, we need alternatives. This has never happened at this scale. The dollar has always been the king, the reserve currency of the world. But thanks to inflation, reckless spending, and the Fed's total mismanagement, confidence is weakening. If countries start moving away from the dollar even slowly, it will mean higher prices, weaker purchasing power, more inflation, more instability. The Fed won't tell you this, but the truth is clear. America's economic dominance is being challenged, and the Fed helped create the opening 7. A financial reset may be coming, whether they admit it or not. Now, I'm not predicting doom. I never do that. But I'm realistic. I understand how systems work. And right now, the Federal Reserve has pushed our system to its limit. You cannot print trillions, raise rates massively, inflate bubbles, pop bubbles, ignore debt, ignore banking risks, ignore global pressure, and expect everything to just magically fix itself. Something has to give. So what's coming? A reset, a correction, a realignment. Call it whatever you want. But the economy is going to shift dramatically over the next few years. And if the wrong people are in charge, if the Fed keeps doing what it's doing, then that shift is going to be painful. But if we get smart leadership, strong leadership, leadership that actually understands business, economics, jobs, America, then we can navigate it. We can come out stronger. We can rebuild. Because remember, America is strong. The people are strong. The problem is the leadership. All right, folks. We've covered a lot, and I mean a lot. We've talked about the Federal Reserve, how they created this mess, how they hid the truth, and what's coming next. But now I want to finish with something very important, something every American needs to hear. A warning, yes, but also a path forward. Because I don't just talk about problems, I talk about solutions. That's the difference between me and the people running things right now. So let me tell you exactly where we stand, what's at stake, and what has to happen next if America is going to recover from this disaster. The Federal Reserve created. 1, the American people deserve leaders who tell them the truth. The first thing we need, and it sounds simple, but believe me, it's very rare, is honesty, real honesty, straight talk. People are tired of being lied to. They're tired of being told everything is wonderful while their savings shrink, while groceries climb, while jobs disappear. They're tired of hearing that the economy is strong when they can barely keep up. The American people deserve leaders who acknowledge the pain, the inflation, the instability, and who have the courage to say, something is wrong, something is broken, and we're going to fix it. That's leadership, not excuses, not cover-ups, not sugarcoating, the truth. 2, we must bring back strong, smart, America First economic policy. When I was president, we had the greatest economy in the history of the world, and it wasn't an accident. It happened because we made smart, tough America First decisions. We cut taxes, we cut regulations, we unleashed American energy, we brought back manufacturing, we negotiated fair trade deals, we created millions of jobs, and the Federal Reserve wasn't running wild like they are now. Inflation was low, wages were rising, people were optimistic. So what's the path forward? Very simple. We restore the policies that work. We stop the policies that failed. Energy independence back, manufacturing back, strong borders back, smart trade back, stable money back, because the truth is, America knows how to build a strong economy. We've done it before, we can do it again. 3, the Federal Reserve must be reined in. They cannot operate without accountability. This is huge, and it's long overdue. The Federal Reserve has too much power and too little accountability. They can print money, destroy money, raise rates, crash markets, inflate bubbles, burst bubbles, influence banks, influence jobs, influence elections, and most of the time they face zero consequences for the chaos they cause. There must be oversight, transparency, limits, accountability, no more hiding data, no more fake projections, no more pretending inflation is 3% when people know it's 20%. No more pretending the banking system is strong while banks sit on massive losses. The Federal Reserve must answer to the American people again. 4, we must protect the middle class, the backbone of America. You know, they used to say America had the strongest middle class in the world. Now look at what the Fed and terrible leadership have done. People are working harder than ever, but getting less. Savings are shrinking. Debt is rising. Home ownership feels impossible. Retirement feels out of reach. This is unacceptable. A strong country must have a strong middle class, not a shrinking one, not a struggling one, a strong one. So what do? We lower costs. We secure energy. We bring back jobs. We protect pensions. We encourage savings. We stop inflation, not with fake promises, but with real policy. When the middle class is strong, America is strong. 5, America must show strength, not weakness on the world stage. I'll tell you this, and you know it's true. The world is watching what's happening right now. They see the inflation. They see the debt. They see the instability. They see the weak leadership. They see the Federal Reserve panicking. They see the dollar under pressure. And when America looks weak, the world becomes dangerous. But when America looks strong, when America looks confident, when America looks like a country that knows what it's doing, nobody challenges us, nobody tests us, nobody doubts us. Strength keeps the world stable. Weakness invites chaos. So what has to happen? We must rebuild American strength at home and abroad. A strong dollar, a strong economy, strong leadership, strong trade, strong borders, strong defense. The world respects strength, and America must lead again. 6, the future can be bright if we make the right decisions now. Now look, I know this video has been tough. A lot of truth, a lot of problems, a lot of warnings. But let me be perfectly clear. America can come back from this, and America can come back stronger than ever. We've bounced back from worse. We've rebuilt after wars, depressions, disasters. We've always found a way forward, but it requires leadership. real leadership, not the weak, confused, incompetent stuff we're seeing now. Leadership that understands money, leadership that understands business, leadership that understands jobs, leadership that understands the American people, leadership that loves this country. If we make the right decisions, smart decisions, America will rise again. Bigger, stronger, safer, more prosperous. The Federal Reserve created a disaster, but the American spirit can fix it. Because remember this, and I always say it, America doesn't lose because of our people. We only lose because of bad leadership. And when the leadership changes, when the direction changes, the future changes, our future can be incredible. We just have to take it back. Final words, thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about the truth. And thank you for standing up for America. Stay strong, stay smart, and stay ready, because the road ahead will be challenging. But together, we can make America greater than ever before.